Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson. We are going to do the match preview of Newcastle's trip to Aston Villa, but we're going to spend the first half of this show talking about Newcastle's fantastic 5-0 win over Crystal Palace on Wednesday night, 3 points, which sent them up to third in the Premier League table. John, welcome back to the show. How are you feeling after watching that last night up at St James's Park?
I'm feeling like every Geordie on top of the world. I mean, it's getting better and better. I mean, when you realise in the last 6 games, Andrew, which we've won them all, we scored 1 against West Ham, 2 against Liverpool and Brentford, 3 against Leicester, 4 against Manchester United, and 5 against Palace. So it is literally getting better and better, which is terrific. And in all those games, the same 11 started and got the job done before anyone was substituted. So it is. I mean, could it be going better? No, it couldn't, because in that run we won a trophy as well.
Yeah, and we'll take 6 against Aston Villa if anyone is offering that up. Talk to us, John.
Wouldn't we just?
We would. Talk to us about that consistency then, because you mentioned there this is the 6th game in a row that the starting 11 has been the same starting 11. How important is that consistency going into this final few games?
Yeah, it is absolutely imperative if you can get it, if injuries allow you to get it. And isn't it ironic that the only thing that's had a change in that 6 game run is the manager? You know, nothing has had a change on the field. The players, the same 11 have started every game, but we've changed the manager. Newcastle United can never get a clean sheet if health, whatever happens. But I mean, the consistency of being able to field the same side is enormous to any football club. And when you look at Newcastle this week against Manchester United and Crystal Palace, the confidence is oozing out of every single player on the park. They all know their own game, what they're supposed to do, and they know everyone else's. So they're all on the same wavelength. The confidence is massive. What helps as well, in my opinion, Andrew, is when it's a short run in. You know, the beginning of the season, you've got 38 matches, you've got 9 months, you've got ups and downs, but the mind's concentrated now. There's a short burst on the banjo to get to the ultimate prize, and everything's in sight, and you tick them off as you go along. And that also helps concentrate minds and concentrate on what we've got to do. And the transformation in several players is absolutely astonishing and so wonderful to watch. I mean, we are wing wonders now. Could you ever foresee us being wing wonders when one of the wingers would not be Anthony Gordon? Anthony Gordon's been a superstar since he came here. He's gone into the England team. He's been a superstar in the England team. All of a sudden, we are cooking on gas. All the goals are coming from the two wings and the assists, and neither of the two wings is Gordon. I mean, Murphy and Barnes have done so well that at least temporarily, Gordon is restricted to being a bit player going on as a sub. Who would have said that just a few weeks back? Who would have said that before the cup final when we were lamenting having to go into cup final without Gordon? And it was woe is me. A sort of week before the cup final, it changed significantly in the build up to the cup final. But it's quite incredible. I mean, Murphy and Bonds were both at one stage big players at Newcastle. Murphy in particular, but Bonds as well. And now they're absolutely essential. And both of them looking real quality, both in assists and in their goal output. And both of them actually, at this moment, in my opinion, look better finishers than Gordon. If Gordon can finish, he's got 6 goals already this season. He had double figures was his last season. But you always feel he might score, he might miss when he gets through. When Bonds gets through, it's almost like a centre forward getting through. You just turn away and say goal, and 9 times out of 10 it is a goal.
Yeah, fantastic goal from him last night, and we will talk all about the goals in a moment. But just first off, John, obviously Eddie Howe remains out of action, remains in hospital recovering from pneumonia. And Jason Tyndall was asked yesterday about his contact with Eddie Howe, and he's not had any footballing matters within the contact to Eddie Howe. He says, I think at a time like this, the most important thing is your health, that you rest and recover. We wish Eddie all the best, and the more he can rest, the sooner he'll be back. So it sounds like Eddie is staying well away from everything, and I guess again it just reaffirms though his trust in his staff. I mean, because we know what Eddie's like; he's meticulous. He'll want to be getting involved, but he's clearly listening to doctor's orders. But also just how well the staff have listened to Eddie over the years and how they're all kind of pulling in the same direction. You can't argue with the two results so far.
Oh, I mean, the staff have done absolutely brilliantly. I mean, from Eddie's point of view, I suspect, Andrew, that it's almost taken out of his hands. He's felt too ill to take part in the real Eddie Howe way. Certainly, I would think the doctors are telling him there's no way, Jose, that you're going to do more than you've got to do. You're in our hands and you do as you're told. And that is 100%. Whatever happens, this is just a sport. Oh no, it's a little bit more than that. It's a business, but it's just a business. Your health, if every single player, every single staff member, etc., etc., is the most important thing of the lot, and we want Eddie fit. And the suspicion is that Eddie's had it tough. It has been tough to knock out a workaholic like Eddie. It's got to be tough, and he's got to take it easy. I mean, he's not going to come back anytime soon, and I mean double soon because he's not even out of hospital yet, as far as we know at this given moment. And you don't come out of hospital and walk straight down to St James's Park. You've got to recover at home, and it's absolutely right that he does that. And the players are doing the right thing by him, and so are the staff. The staff have been truly magnificent because any worries we had that a boat without the captain at the tiller might be a little liable to go off course just hasn't been so. We've scored 4 goals against Manchester United and 5 against Crystal Palace. This will be the first match on the road without Eddie, but I mean the job's done by Jason Tyndall, by Graham Jones, and by the rest of the backroom staff has been nothing short of magnificent. And they are what they are. They're loyal. They're not backstabbers. They're not looking to get the job eventually or anything like that. They're looking to support the manager 100% and support the club 100%. They epitomize the attitude that's in the dressing room amongst the players. That is the real thing Newcastle United have got going for them that some clubs have not is that spirit, that camaraderie, that bond between brothers. Newcastle have got that, and you can't buy that. I mean, that is worth its weight in gold, and Newcastle have got that in abundance.
They certainly have, and it also seems so that they're managing to separate the kind of the emotional impact of not having Howe there, him being ill, and the job that they have to do. Because Harvey Barnes, sorry, was asked about missing Eddie Howe, and he said, "We haven't heard much. I know he's recovering and heading in the right way, which is great news. A few of the lads have sent him messages, but we're just focusing on our job." And when you get down to it, that's exactly what they have to do. That's exactly what they've been doing. Obviously, the more they win, I'm sure it'll boost Eddie Howe's spirits even more. But they seem to have that kind of clinical touch, John, where they have separated, as we say, the emotional side of things to actually just getting the job done.
I think good footballers, pro footballers, to do that. We the hacks are the people that say do it for Eddie, and then when it's done, oh, it was done for Eddie. And that's a wonderful in the world of romance, and we're all romantic, and there's nobody more romantic than Geordies. And in the world of romance, you're doing it for the stricken leader, aren't you? But I mean, in reality, I think it's much simpler than that. They're doing it for themselves, and that is what Eddie wants. What he's instilled in them is you go and do it, and you will be in the Champions League. You will be getting the big books. You will be getting the new contracts, the big stage, extra top players coming in. it's a byproduct that it's benefiting Eddie, but they're doing it in the way they ought to do it as professionals. And Eddie is the one that's instilled that into him. Let's eliminate all of their thoughts, all of their sentiments, all of their fears, all of the outside deviations, and let's be one-eyed and get the job done. And I think that's what Newcastle are doing magnificently, and that's why where we haven't been able to see the seam between the Newcastle of old with Eddie and the current Newcastle without Eddie. It's been seamless because the show's gone on in the same way as when Newcastle lose a key player, and they've lost Botman and they've lost Hall, uh, etc., etc. They lost Gordon for four, 5 matches. You still haven't noticed that because other people's come in like Trippier and the two centre halves bonding and Livramento playing on the left wing and Bonds suddenly coming to be what he is. It's all been seamless because good teams do that, and that doesn't mean that Newcastle don't need these other guys. Of course they do, but it means that they've got that strength and depth and that will and determination to win, which keeps them going and overcome hurdles like the Beaches Brooks.
Indeed, and we'll get into talk about the goals now, John, because there was 5 of them last night, which still is amazing to think about. I can't remember the last time Newcastle were 4-0 up at half time. I'm sure someone in the comments might let me know. But the goals came from Murphy. There was then an own goal from Mark Gay. Harvey Barnes got another goal, Fabian Schär and Alexander Isak. We'll start, John, with Jacob Murphy because he also got an assist. And he has now got 19 goal contributions this season. And that is as many in his previous 3 campaigns combined. So that shows you what a great run of form Jacob Murphy is on. The key question, John, though, was it a cross? Was it a shot?
Oh no, that was a shot. I mean, I honestly believed Tonali's was a cross when I watched it live. And then Tonali said it was 70% a cross and 30% a shot. How you can have a 30% shot when you're crossing it, it's 70%. I'm not quite certain, but when lost in language and the boy's done brilliant to learn his English the way he has. And by the way, Tonali can say what he wants from me because it's what he does. It matters. By Jove, doesn't he do it? But we were more or less behind the shot and saw the replay on the screens, and he turned and he drilled it. He saw a space above the keeper and inside the post to get that wasn't a cross. That was a shot. And he said so afterwards, and he was quite right, and he wasn't kidding, because I said at the time with Tonali, any out and out goal scorer like Super Marco Shearer, when Tonali scored, would have said, of course I meant it, because that's what goal scorers say. But in Murphy's case, he meant it all right. It was 100% shot, and it was 100% top shot as well.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the replay and you can see he takes a little
Oh,
look at the gap in the keeper and fires it home. But you were talking, John, before about confidence. That is a goal of confidence. You know, if you're going through a bad
oh,
run, you're not turning and shooting there, not trying to take that goal. You're probably trying to put the ball across the box to take an extra touch. But there's so much confidence and belief flowing through this side that they are taking opportunities like that when most teams wouldn't do, most wingers wouldn't do. It's just for me the definition of confidence is that goal.
oh, totally. Because when you haven't got confidence, you see people pass the ball 4 or 5 times round the 6 yard box because they don't want to take the shot. They don't want to be the person that misses. And then when you get sides like the way Newcastle are playing, Newcastle on the counter are frightening. I mean, they should carry a health warning. They're absolutely frightening. And by the way, is there anybody more frightening than Harvey Barnes in the way that he directly goes for the throat? I mean, when Harvey Barnes gets the ball and gets on the hoof, and I thought the goal he did score, Harvey Barnes, you know what the defender was expecting him? He was expecting him to pull it onto his right foot and finish across the keeper in the way he always does. he pulled it the other way onto his left and finished on his left. And I thought, good on you, pal. That is confidence. You didn't used to do that. You used to get it on your right foot every time. You completely fooled the defender who was expecting him to go onto his right by going wide instead onto his left and finish. And by the way, does he get an assist for the Gay own goal? Because he ought to, because it was him that terrified Gay into getting in the way and diverting it into a net. And by the way, is he about the third top goal scorer for Newcastle now, Gay? With his own goals. I mean, he mightn't have come and joined us, but he's done us the world of good since we were linked to him.
He certainly has obviously scored the own goal back in November or December. It was down at Selhurst Park. But Jacob Murphy,
Yeah.
John, said after the game, as you've mentioned there, he said, I did mean it. When the juice is flowing, you've just got to hit it. And that exactly is the point we're making here, that it's just a team full of confidence and belief. But on that Barnes goal, John, you're spot on. Again, I think when there is so much belief flowing through the team, you're going to be trying things that you maybe wouldn't do if you're feeling a little bit down in the dumps. And it was such a great kind of team goal as well. So fast moving forward. And Barnes only had one thing in his mind. And I was really chuffed when he hit that with his left and it went in, because and I think it's harsh criticisms has been of Barnes that he's only got one or two things he does, and that's mainly run, cut inside and hit it with his right, and it works every now and then, doesn't work all the time, then he offers nothing else. But I think he's silencing everyone that's doubted him, and when you see him last night in the performance he put in, and again scoring with his left foot when most people said, oh, he hasn't got a left foot. I'll tell you what, John, this guy's just going to run on and on and on, and Gordon is going to have a tough time getting back into that left wing.
Yeah, which is staggering when you think about it, because he was one of the blue chip players. We were in a mass panic when he might go to Liverpool and saying, if he gets injured, we're in trouble because Barnes isn't playing that well, Murphy isn't playing that well, etc., etc. We rely on Gordon enormously. And I'll tell you another thing that is perhaps overlooked about Barnes' game at the moment. Since he got in the side regularly, by Jove, last night he off worked back. The number of times he worked back and won the ball back for us in defensive positions. And now that was part of his game I always thought was lacking a little bit. He didn't work back a lot when he was not on the ball. Murphy does it amazingly well and does it naturally. I thought Bonds worked off the ball back last night absolutely terrifically. Now, we all know what he can do going forward, but he did it going back as well. I think he's come on leaps and bounds in this one.
He has, and I think that you mentioned there, but also it's just part of Newcastle United really just doing their homework on Palace last night. I thought it was a really good all-round team display, and I said in the match verdict after the game that I found it difficult, John, to pick a man of the match, and if I was doing the player ratings, that I might not actually rate anyone above a 7, and that's not a criticism of Newcastle United, but it was simply just because they didn't have to get out of first gear. And also, they were good enough, in my opinion, when everyone's putting a 7 out of 10 performance to win 5-0, which is a massive compliment. But I didn't feel like anyone really had to stand out to win last night. I know Tonali was up and down the pitch and he was fantastic again. And Barnes, as we said, was probably the main threat. Fabian Schär and Dan Burn showing that partnership going from strength to strength. But I didn't feel there was a man of the match performance. But again, it's a compliment because they didn't need to put in a man of match the performance because they're just that good and Palace were that poor.
You know what, Andrew? That's what good teams look like. They look as if they're not in top gear. They look as if there isn't a man of the match. They look as if, you know why? Because they're all doing their job and all doing their job brilliantly and all cruising and the rest are decimated. It was a magnificent performance. And you know what? Good sides always look as if there's an extra gear. There's an extra bit of petrol in the tank. You know, we should never underestimate and say, isn't it amazing? And wasn't it amazing against Manchester United? It didn't look as if we gave 100% of blood, sweat, and toil because we didn't have to. It didn't take enough out of us. You know why it looked like that? Because we're so classy and we're so good and we're so demoralised sides. I tell you what, when did you last see any single Newcastle United player have even an average game, never mind a poor game? They don't. And you always have a man of the match, somebody that drags the team over the line and gets you the result. And you think, whew, thank goodness we had him because we were struggling and he made the difference. That's when you see big man of the matches. And how often do you say privately, hey, we won, but did you see so and so? And did you see defensively? And, oh, dear me, but we got away with it. We don't have that now. They all look man of the match. And tell me when we've had a poor performance from an individual. We don't. I mean, we had a rash moment, which was Pope on the penalty. I mean, I thought the penalty was harsh, but I tell you what a stupid thing to do. What a ridiculous thing to do that he come out. But I tell you what, if what Pope did in coming out was ridiculous, it wasn't as ridiculous as the penalty, which, I mean, as his penalty hardly had the strength to reach the goalkeeper. I mean, he went down to save it, got a cigar out, had a couple of puffs, and sat in an armchair and picked the ball up and threw it out. It's one of the worst penalties I've ever seen. But I thought the penalty decision was harsh. I really did, because I mean, if you're going to do that, then you're gonna have a load of penalties in the game. I can understand why it was given, and I'm not complaining, but I thought it was on the harsh side. But having said that, the way it was, and by the way, that was the turning factor, because within X number of seconds, instead of being 1-1, it was 2-0, and game over. That the only chance Palace had in the match of making it a match was scoring that penalty. But you know what? I think they would have been swept aside even then, because Manchester United, against all the odds, made it 1-1 in the first half at the weekend, against all the odds when it wasn't deserved, and went on to get slaughtered 4-1 in the second half. And I think Newcastle would have done that. It changed the game because it allowed Newcastle to go 5 up within the hour and then start making all the changes. And as we said in the last podcast, when you make all the changes, we're safe as houses, but we don't score any more goals. And by the way, that stood again, didn't it? That's what we said then is exactly what happened on the night. But at 5-0, you think I'm going to complain about whether we didn't score any more once the subs went on? We had to rest certain players because Villa is a different kettle of fish. And by the way, we had to bring off Joe Linton because we had to keep him from getting a booking. And he's got a fiery temper as our big Joe, and he almost got it against Man U when he lost his head when being subbed. So we did well to sub him because we want him for Aston Villa and beyond. And that was a good move to be able to get him off, and we were able to give people time away from the playing field, which was absolutely terrific. Very, very good.
There was a
By
moment
the
when
way,
I thought,
isn't it amazing, Andrew, that when it's necessary, our two Brazilians can go for years without getting a booking where they racked them up to start with? Bruno did the same thing. Remember when Bruno got a pile of bookings and he had to go for about 12 years with no bookings before you to escape a ban, and he did. And Joe Linton's just done the same thing. It makes you sure when they have to be disciplined, they can be. But of course, we don't want to take the fire out of their belly, which is the way the play is the way they play.
Yeah, I mean, I was grateful he did go off, as you mentioned there, because there was a moment about 5-10 minutes before he got substituted when he thought he should have been awarded a free kick. And the free kick wasn't given, but it was given literally 20 seconds later to Bruno, I think it was. And Joe Linton screaming at the linesman. You're thinking, it doesn't matter. We've won the free kick here. Let it be. And Trippier goes over and calms them down. And you think, goodness me. And thankfully, he goes off a few minutes later. Although he didn't look happy about it, but I'm sure it was explained to him
No,
why
he
it's
didn't. No,
important
he didn't.
that he did go off. But you mentioned, obviously, we've got Shea getting the fourth goal, John. Jacob Murphy with another assist. That was a really nice goal as well, wasn't it? A good cross by Murphy
Yeah.
and Shea heading home.
Pinpoint cross from Murphy. And Cher's got a goal in him, hasn't he? But normally it's a spectacular thing, whacked into the back of the net. Or he tries a chip from his own half. Was the other way on, wasn't it? The chip from his own half set Murphy up for a goal, and Murphy set Sharp for a goal last night. The the flick back from Trippier left Murphy with it. He got the angle all right. He's terrific. Can you remember? This lad's almost 30. He come to Newcastle at the time of Benitez and Bruce and looked average and went out on loan to all these clubs. And, we said, he's a good squad player, Murphy. Keep Murphy. He's a good squad player. And that was absolutely right. All of a sudden, at an age when you begin to think if he hasn't done a lot in his career, and he has done a lot, but not a lot sensational like now. You begin to think, oh, is he slightly, his career's going to go out and it's going to be fine. And we desperately need an outside right signed in the summer, and we should have one in January. The outside right, the way things are going, might have to be support to Murphy instead of taking Murphy's place if he keeps going like this. We still need one, of course, we need one because we need strength and depth. We need two players in every position, which is what Unai Emery says about Villa when they're going in the Champions League. You need two players. When he's asked about Watkins and Rashford, etc., you need two players in every position. Jovan before that, and that's true if you're going to compete for a long time in the Champions League. So we do still need these guys. But when you think if Murphy spending all his career at Norwich as well as with us, going out on loan all over the shop and being a big player. And by the way, nobody deserves it more than him because a nicer man you couldn't wish to meet. And as he got quality, I'm talking about real quality. Yes, he has. So it's a wonderful autumn of his career, really, because he's 30. Certainly not winter, but certainly autumn.
Yeah, he's finally reaching the levels I'm sure you always believed he could do, and it is going to make that summer transfer for a right winger all the more interesting. There might be some who say cash in while he's hitting this fine vein of form, but I'm sure that won't be the case, and he'll be part of the
No,
squad
no,
going
no,
forward.
no. No, for goodness sake, he's loved by Eddie. Eddie will never do that. Eddie's very reluctant to cash in on anybody, but he's not going to cash in on Murphy. Quite, we've waited for Murphy to be like this. And let's say one thing I always thought when Almiron had his great season, it was a flash in the pan. I don't think this is a flash in the pan. I think he's reached maturity late in life, which is what happens with some players. Uh, Cash in on him now, and whoever makes that decision wants shooting, but nobody will make that decision.
Yeah, no, he'll be stopping for a long time to come. The fifth goal came from Alexander Isak, and he had chances, John, to get his goal. A couple of good saves made by Henderson. There was a header that he fluffed as well. It just looked like he was trying maybe a little bit too hard. I think what we've seen in recent weeks is him get a little bit frustrated because he's not been able to join in scoring goals, and that's what he does for a living. And I think we saw him getting a little bit frustrated in this game. He needed that goal more than anyone, really. And the goal, actually, I thought was just him not really thinking about it. It was him just hitting it and picking his spot without really thinking about it. Wonderful finish. But before we talk about the actual finish from Isak, I think we have to compliment Joe Linton and Isak for the press, because that is how the goal came about. Similar to what we saw against Manchester United on Sunday. It was just pressing the defence really high, panicking them, and then getting the ball into a goal-scoring position and taking that chance. But the press, John, across the entirety of the game was really impressive again. And you had a few concerns, didn't you, understandably, about them being able to maintain that level
Do it
after the
again.
Manchester United game, but they did it.
Yes, they did absolutely, and good on them. And it was absolutely the press and Joe Linton doing what Joe Linton does best. When he's a beast of a man and beasts a player and gets the ball off him and he stuck Isak in. And believe you me, Isak needed that goal. It reminded me a bit of when Frank Clark scored his only goal for Newcastle United, and that was the fifth goal, and the whole stadium erupted because Frank had played about 856 games for no goals and he got one. And I was as pleased with that goal against Palace as I was of any of them because Isak needed it big time. Isak had missed a hat trick of chances that were easier than that one beforehand. Now, all great goal scorers and all regular goal scorers go through a patch. Hopefully the patch is a short one. and he scored the winner at Wembley. He scored a one after that, and then he'd gone 2 games. It was looking like 3 games where he'd missed a barrel. He'd missed good chances in all the last 3 games before he scored here, and it was a sweet, sweet finish. Could do what he did naturally, and I always remember Malcolm MacDonald, who was one of the greatest goal scorers we've ever had, wrote a book which he entitled "Never Afraid to Miss." And what he meant by that is, as a goal scorer, he had so much confidence. When he missed an open goal, he knew he was a step nearer scoring the next one because he just scored. And this is what Isak needed here. And you could see the relief on him, and you could see the relief on other players when he scored. He's got, what, 25 again this season, 25 last season, 6 games to go. I mean, fabulous. Anybody that doubted him recently wants their head examined because we're lucky to have him, like we're lucky to have so many players. Tonali, the other 2 midfielders, the 2 wide players, and Gordon still, the back. We're lucky to have all of these boys. Never doubt them. They can have a dip. Against Manchester United, for example, I thought Isak was terrific for the first half, terrific in his play without getting a goal, etc., etc. But he got his goal, and I was almost willing, Mad Dog, to leave him on until he got his goal because I knew they would take him off at some time, put Callum Wilson on because we're 4 up, and we've got Aston Villa to come. But I'm thinking, leave him on for the moment, let him score, and he did. And once he scored, I thought he can stick his number up anytime he like now. He's got the goal that he needed. That's a job done for him personally. And it was very, very important for him personally. And once something like that happens, Andrew, be up and running again, goal wise,
No,
I mean.
yep, I think so. I think we'll see him bag a few goals and maybe even break that 30-goal barrier in the remaining 6 games of the season. He has 27 goal contributions in the Premier League this season, does Alexander Isak, which is the most since Alan Shearer in the 2001-2002 campaign. So Isak there going level with Alan Shearer on another record. Obviously, the big one is still a little bit in the distance, but you never know, John. If he stays around, he might manage to break it. But Newcastle United up to third, John, which is absolutely tremendous. Let me just put the league table up on the screen because why wouldn't we remind ourselves about it? Here it is.
Absolutely.
2-point gap on Forest and such a gap on Chelsea and Aston Villa that I've not included them in this graphic. I've only included the top 5, but they've put distance between themselves and Villa and Chelsea. And obviously they're 4 points off City and 2 points off Nottingham Forest. And the goal difference as well, John, is absolutely key. I mean, should we be looking up? Are we chasing Arsenal down now?
It's a wonderful, wonderful thought. And yes, we do. And I'll use the phrase I always use, shy Ben's getting out. I mean, we were chasing Nottingham Forest for long enough, weren't we? And now we've overtaken them and we did it in the proper way. A draw would have got us above them on goal difference. But with Villa to come and other matches to come, we didn't want that. We've got to keep charging. Why not have a go at Arsenal? We've still got to play Arsenal. So yes, let's have a go. While doing that, let's remember the people behind us and let's hear the hooves in our ears because we want to keep them at bay as well. If we finish third top, what an end to the season that does. If we finish second top, dare say it, and we're only 4 points behind them, dare say it, that would be the joint best finish since 1927 when we won the title. And that's nearly 100 years ago because the entertainers finished second top 2 successive seasons and we would finish second top this. That would be fun, double dozy. But I'll be happy to finish third and I'll be happy to keep those other ones behind us. And let's use the famous but very boring phrase, one game at a time. Sadness is tough enough. Let's concentrate on that before we have ourselves overtaken Arsenal. Let's concentrate on what we've got to do against Aston Villa because that is tough. And for me, is one of the toughest of the running, if not the toughest. And we have to go to Arsenal as well. So they're the 2 tough games left. But this one is as tough as it gets, I believe.
But then Palace was said to be tough because of the form they were in, especially away from home. And Newcastle absolutely dismantled them. So hopefully they get a similar scoreline against Villa. And before we talk about Villa, just a reminder to our listeners and
Similar
viewers.
scoreline. Behave yourself. Behave yourself. Similar scoreline. We're really getting on Fantasy Island now. 5-0 away at Villa. I tell you what, pigs fly. You don't know, but let's keep a sense of reality so that a huge balloon isn't pricked when it's only 4-0.
Indeed. Well, I'll show you my score prediction at the end of the show, John. A reminder to you guys watching and listening, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in your podcast description box to get a heavily exclusively discounted offer on your plan. Prices start from just £2.30 and can be shared across 10 devices, so keep yourself safe and help support the podcast as well. Two questions I want to ask you, John, before we dive deeper into the Aston Villa game. Have Newcastle United currently got the best midfield in the Premier League?
That is a very, very good question. And I think the answer is probably yes. It was always said that the best midfield in the Premier League was always said earlier this season was Liverpool's, and our three dismantled them at Wembley. Ironically, a lot of people say the current Aston Villa midfield with Tielemans and McGinn, and if you have Rodgers in there, is as good as anything in the Premier League. And we'll find out what happens when they go against our three at Villa Park. We handled their Liverpool's three. Can I put it another way? I have no wish whatsoever to swap any of our three midfielders for anybody else in the Premier League in a similar position.
That answers it. There we go. I think it is the best midfield in the Premier League currently. The form they're in, the way they complement each other, Bruno, Tonali, and Joe Linton, it just works. Tonali, what more can we say about him? Absolutely brilliant. And there was a moment last night, John, in which he chases back 20, 30 yards into his own half to win the ball and then ends up winning a throw-in. And I just stood up and applauded it. It was a bit of a nothing moment, but also at the same time, it was a moment that tells you everything you need to know about Sandro Tonali. He chases absolutely everything. He's just a superb player, and I just love watching him.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I think he runs around with a fire extinguisher on his back. I mean, I said early on, he knows where the bush fires are going to be, and he's there to put them out. I mean, honestly, if he keeps playing the way he plays, we've had some magnificent midfield players at Newcastle United off the top of my head. Beardsley, if you could call him a midfield player, and he could play virtually anywhere. Um, we've had Gaza, we've had Hibby, we've had Tony Green, we've had great midfielder players. I look at this boy, and he's got everything, and I mean everything. There's nobody shoots harder than Tonali, and he's not a forward. There's nobody shoots harder. There's no better defensive midfielder than Tonali putting the fires out. There's nobody with his vision that he's got on the ball. And is anybody more athletic than him and getting around the park for an hour and a half plus whatever the ref wants to put on? I mean, he's phenomenal. He is phenomenal. And every game, you're going to get an 8 out of 10 from him every game, and it's just a matter of if it's a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And that's taken nothing away from the two Brazilians on either side of them, nothing away from the front three up front that are doing terrific and scoring a pile of goals. But this is a real bonus for us, and a bonus for himself, having come through the traumatic time he did when he was out banned. He is just a fabulous player.
Yeah, an absolute joy to watch. The second question, John, is: are Newcastle United currently in this form the most feared team in the Premier League?
Yes, because Arsenal in the Premier League are not showing the form currently that they showed earlier in the season when they had an orthodox number 9. They're certainly doing it in the Champions League, as we saw in the 2 games against Real Madrid. But in the Premier League, they're not. Liverpool aren't as openly beautiful and all-consuming as they were prior to Wembley, when Mo Salah was scoring all his goals and doing all his assists, and the midfield was dominating games. Man City there in transition. Ironically, probably the best side in result rate, the second best side to us is Aston Villa on current form, I would think. But I think we are the team of the moment on current form, standalone. Yes, absolutely.
And what message do you think it sends out to the rivals around them chasing down these Champions League spots when you win so convincingly against a team like Palace, who've been so brilliant in recent weeks?
Oh, the message it sends out is chase Nottingham Forest and Manchester City and all the rest that are around there. Forget about Newcastle, forget about Arsenal, and forget about Liverpool. Those three are going to make the Champions League. Fight for the other two places. That's a message it sends out. We've said for weeks that the only two that's going to make the Champions League for certain are Liverpool and Arsenal. I think you can put Newcastle in that now and say, right, the rest of you are fighting for the other two Champions League places because it'll go to 5 this season, of course. And that's a message you sent out to everybody else. By the way, Newcastle have booked a place along with the top two, so fight for the other two places.
Yeah, I am that confident as well. I think they will finish in the Champions League now. And I genuinely do think they will finish second. I make some wild predictions, but I have to say most of them tend to come true. The cup final being one of them. And I'm going to stick with that. I think they'll catch Arsenal. I think they will finish second. But as you said, John, it's game by game, and they have to beat Villa on Saturday. We're hoping that Villa are feeling a little bit sorry for themselves, aren't we, after that exit in the
Well,
Champions League?
that would be nice. That's what we will unquestionably hope for, and maybe there will be. I think the only thing that goes against that, when they were sort of 5-1 down on aggregate after Paris Saint-Germain scored 2 goals early on, I thought this is great. They're going to be humiliated. They're going to feel humiliated. The bubble's going to be burst, etc., etc. But they fought back magnificently on that day at Villa Park. They were carried out of the arena, every one of the players on the shield. They did themselves proud. They've had time to dust themselves down, rest weary bones, and look at what's left for them to play for. And you know what? There's plenty left for them to play for because having had such a long run in the Champions League this season, and I know the new formation of the Champions League helped that, you don't get knocked out too quick the way things are in the new format, and I hope we benefit from that next season. But they'll want to go straight back in the Champions League. They've had a taste of it. They want to go straight back in the Champions League. And to do that, they have ground to make up. So they'll want to do that. And they're in the FA Cup and they can win their first trophy in a while. Not as long as us, by nobody's as long as us. But they can win their first trophy in a while. And by the way, you can make out a case for them being favourites to win the FA Cup. You certainly think they'll beat Palace in the semi-final. And if Man City beat Forest, and they should, that's the final. And Man City are vulnerable these days. Villa could win the FA Cup easily. You look at what Villa have achieved this season. They've made the quarterfinals of the Champions League and went out with honour, not with humiliation. Then the semi-finals of the FA Cup and can win it. They can qualify for the Champions League again. And then in their last 7 Premier League games, they've won 5, drawn 1, and lost 1. That's a great run, and they're within 3 points of Forest. So they've got plenty to play for, and they've had a full dance card this season, a lot more games than us in because of Champions League. But Emery is off magnificently juggled his squad and got the best out of them. And even when they've gone out the Champions League, it is this late stage to the best side in Europe, which is Paris Saint-Germain this season, they went out with honour. So, we are euphoric and we have every right to be, and it is not overhyped one iota. But these are dangerous. Make no mistake about that. The only thing that'll produce problems for us is if we underestimate how good they are. We mightn't like them to be good. We mightn't like a manager who turned his back on Newcastle. I don't, and that's the reason I don't. But I admire him tactically and what he's capable of doing. This is difficult.
It certainly is, but Newcastle's record on the road this season is absolutely tremendous. They've won 8 games on the road. The last one 9 away back in the 2001-2002 season, and only Liverpool and Arsenal have picked up more points on the road than Newcastle this season. So they are a force on away from home, which is fantastic. Not something we often have said in the past, but something we are definitely saying this time around. And against Aston Villa, John, they've got a tremendous record of late. And I know records are there to be wiped away, but Aston Villa have lost 5 of their last 6 Premier League games against Newcastle, which is as many as they had lost in their previous 16. So Newcastle have flipped that around. And have in recent years really had a good record against Villa. So the stats suggest a positive afternoon at Villa Park, but as you say, they are a dangerous side. And what I look at, John, is we mentioned, are they going to be wounded animals and they're going to have a right reaction from Tuesday night against PSG? Also, are they going to use the fact that if they lost to Newcastle on Saturday, there would be 8 points behind them. So it's one of those where it's really a must-win for Aston Villa, and I'm wondering if that's going to maybe work in their favour on Saturday.
Yeah, yeah, they'll be up for it, and the crowd will be up for it. No question about that. And while we have a terrific away record, which we do, Villa's got a terrific home record. They've only lost 1 game all season at home. Don't say that. Listen, mate, your blinking father-in-law spent the next 48 hours telling you all about that. Don't you worry. Um, but no, all I'm trying to do is not play. How on earth could I play down Newcastle? I'm so thrilled. It's untrue. I'm bursting my britches. I'm ready to fly to the moon. I don't need a rocket like the girls did the other day. I can just fly by flopping my arms. But having said that, I want to keep a little bit of reality in the thing and say that there's games to come that Newcastle should win comfortably. And by the way, the one after this is one of them, Ipswich at home. But this will be tough. When I say tough, I don't mean impossible. I don't mean we won't win. I just mean it will be tough. Facts are facts. This is as tough as it gets in the running, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, they've just got to be focused and do what they've done in recent weeks. And I'm sure the messages don't think ahead other than this game on Saturday. We have to though, John, talk about the depth of Newcastle United's squad, because we saw again, as you mentioned as well in the previous preview, that when the subs are made, the level drops down. And unfortunately, I mean, it wasn't a negative because the night was so fantastic against Crystal Palace, but it was definitely noticeable that the level dropped. You've got Callum Wilson coming on, you've got Sean Longstaff coming on. It just doesn't work. And I think my biggest concern is, John, again, they've worked really hard against Palace. Okay, they didn't have to get out of first gear, but it's a lot of energy. It's going to be the 3rd game in a week. You look at what Villa have got on the bench. I mean, I'm just looking at the bench, John, for the PSG game and what we would give to have this sort of depth. I mean, you've got Arsenio from obviously on loan from PSG. You've then got Bailey, Ross Barkley, Disassi, who's on loan from Chelsea. Tyrone Mings is there. Jacob Ramsey's there. And Ollie Watkins as well. They've got so much depth that the starting 11 on Saturday, you wouldn't be surprised if maybe 3, 4 of them came in to replace the players who played against PSG. Whereas Newcastle United, they have to really play the same starting 11 for the 7th game in a row. And it's all good when they're in great form and you're on that wave of optimism, but tired legs will inevitably creep in. And
Sure.
I'm sure Tyndall and Eddie Howe, if they had the opportunity, they would love to be able to bring not just another body in to start, but real quality, because that's the difference. The difference is the quality Villa have got in the squad in
But
comparison to
and
Newcastle.
mind you, you've got to give them compliments, Andrew, because they've built that squad. They've gambled. They've sold top players. They sold Jovan. They sold Luis to Italy, etc. They've sold some of their big hitters, but they've been clever in what they brought in. They have done well in the transfer market, and they've advanced at a rapid rate of knots, like we've advanced at a rapid rate of knots. Where they're better than us, as you rightly say, is on the bench. I mean, the odds are that Newcastle will be unchanged. But I tell you what, and I would guarantee this, I bet you Aston Villa aren't unchanged. I bet they bring some of those bench people in to start because of what they've had to the energy they've had to expend against Paris Saint Germain, and I bet you the cracks don't show when they do that. Um, but for us it is because we haven't got a bench. Yes, we've got Gordon, which we're pleased for. Yes, we've got Willock, but he doesn't get a long run to get his form and his fitness and everything. He's hit, he misses, he's in and out. Kraft is Mr. Reliability, but you wouldn't start him ahead of the two fullbacks that are in, would you? Voluntarily, he's the good backup. Um, Longstaff and Lewis Miley or Willock aren't going to keep up the standard of what you've just described is the best midfield in the Premier League when you bring any of those three off. So it is difficult. We haven't got the strength and depth, and that's what we're looking for this summer, and we'll get it. But doesn't it even pay an even greater compliment to the 11 that started the last 6 games, that they produced 6 wins when we're so fragile underneath? Um, and as I mentioned in the last one, I've said to you, have we ever scored when we bring the subs on of recent times because the standard dropped significantly? But yes, Eddie was right to do it, and recently Jason's been right to do it because when you're 4 up against Manchester United and you've got a week of 3 games, you've got to bring off your big hitters. When you're 5 up, why are you going to keep them on and grind them into dust for the last half hour in the hope that you get the 6 or maybe even 7, which looks wonderful, but they're exhausted when they go home. You have to do it, and you've got the space to do it because winning's what it's all about. 5-0 stayed 5-0. We would have settled for 5-0 scoreline after 90 minutes before the game started. So, yes, we're doing the right thing. But the worry is that if we go to Villa, Andrew, and at 80 minutes it's 1-1, how many game changers have we got on the bench? Game changers. If they need to change the game, that's when we're in trouble. If we're looking at game changers because it's 1-1 with 10 minutes to go, Gordon might be a bit of a game changer if he hasn't already gone on. Where else? Kraft's a steady away, but he's not going to change the game at 1-1 in the last 10 minutes. And is Willock or Longstaff or Shula or Wilson, with utmost respect, are they going to change the game if we need? That's what we've got to do. Is if we need a game changer in the last 10 minutes, that's when we puff out the cheeks and say, "Come on, let's go again," because we're not certain we've got that.
But what's been good to see is that Newcastle United have got the job done early enough, and then they
Sure.
allow themselves to make these changes. And we've said this in recent weeks, because of the lack of depth, then those who do start from the word go have to go out and win that game in the first half or early in the second half to then allow the change to be made to keep the legs. And thankfully in recent weeks they've done it. Interesting though, plenty of debate last night again, John, on Will Asula versus Callum Wilson, because Callum, bless him, comes on, he's had 3 touches, and again it's difficult to come into that kind of game where it's 5-0 already, it's lacking pace, and it was more like a training exercise towards the end of it. They were just passing the ball about without any pressure whatsoever. So it is difficult, I think, for someone to make a real impact. But at the same time, it just doesn't look. I don't think he looks all that comfortable, does Callum? Unfortunately, where do you stand on some people's beliefs that actually, when you're 5-0 up, should you be looking to the future? And should you be giving Asula 20 minutes as opposed to Callum Wilson, who more than likely will be leaving in the summer?
Yeah, I can follow the train of thought. If I'm brutally honest, and our job's to be brutally honest, I've got no faith right now in either Wilson or Sula. I'm just grateful that we're 5-0 up when it happens because again, as I say, if we were 1-1 and wanting somebody to win the game, would you have huge confidence in one of them coming on and winning it for you? I mean, Wilson looks as if he's spent force. Everything he had, which was good when he was fit, like the ability to score goals. He's got 49 for us, for goodness sake. His record over his time here is great. But he looks laboured now. When he comes on, he looks no threat whatsoever, and he looks to me as if he knows it. He's playing out time until it's the end of the season, and he gets the handshake and the gratitude and that every Geordie he'll give him. And Asula is so raw. I mean, he's got, he's got more rough edges. And again, not his fault. He'll give you pace and he'll give you endeavour. He'll give you that in abundance. But I mean, he's nowhere near Premier League class. He would not bother too many defenders. Um, and that said, with utmost respect to a young man, it's early in his career. He shouldn't be anywhere near the first team. He should be out on loan somewhere learning the game. He hardly played for Sheffield United, for goodness sake. He hasn't got a lot in his tank if having done it all before. In an ideal world, he would be out learning his trade on loan somewhere and not centre forward. And quite frankly, for vastly different reasons, I think it's a toss of a coin between Wilson and Asula to go on as a backup because I think both, in vastly different ways, aren't up to the job you're asking them to do.
There we go. Well, let us know in the comments your thoughts. All that remains to be done then, John, is to get your prediction for Saturday. How is it going to go?
The automatic answer, if I didn't think about it, would be to go for a draw for several reasons. But let me finish as well. For several reasons, in as much as can we win every single game? We've won 6 on the trot. Can we, including the cup final? Can we actually do that in the next 6 games? Are we going to win every single game to the end of the season? Much more important, Andrew, and wouldn't it be wonderful to do that, but to remain unbeaten until the end of the season. I mean, a draw, for example, would be a blinking good result for us because I think that would keep us in third place. It would keep Villa back there, who I think will push for and maybe make fourth or fifth, regardless of Saturday. Uh, and they're a good team. They've lost once at home. That's all. They'll be in the FA Cup final, in my opinion. A draw would be a fabulous result. But my heart says the way we are playing, that we can take advantage of the emotion that has drained Aston Villa, however much they were magnificent against Paris Saint-Germain, and we can squeeze it by a goal. Squeeze it by a goal. I'm going for that. But I tell you what, I can understand how, if you're neutral, you could look at it and say this will be a draw. And you know what? I wouldn't say that as a bad result because if Newcastle are unbeaten till the end of the season, then big business. If we lose, and heaven forbid, then we've got to go on and beat Ipswich, which we will, etc., etc. We'll still make it. It wouldn't be the end of the world. But I'm going for a very tough, squeezed win. But if it was a draw, you wouldn't find me losing sleep.
Yeah, when I did the predictor, I did have this one down as a draw. That's probably the sensible option. But do you know what? My heart says win. I think Newcastle are in such good spirits that I could see them winning this game. I don't think it'll be by 5 or 6, unfortunately, but I can see them getting a win here and really cementing their place in third. But just at the final question, then, John, this is their toughest game in the run-in, I think, and you've said it. Obviously, you've got Arsenal coming down the line.
Yeah.
But this is the first real big test, with all due respect to Brentford and Leicester and Palace as good form as they were in. I mean, how big of a difference in level is this going to be for Newcastle United on Saturday?
We do well against when we got the real test. We did well against Liverpool. We've beaten Arsenal 3 times. We've beaten Nottingham Forest 3 times when they were a threat, which I believe they aren't now. We do well against the sides that are a huge test. We beat Villa up here, won a double down at Villa. won a double, and we know how good they've been. We react to that. In the past, it used to be, and it's not anymore, when we played the sides in mid-table, not the sides at the bottom, because we've gone and won at Ipswich and at Southampton and hit Leicester and hit Wolves, and we've beaten the sides at the bottom. The mid-table non-entities are the sides that trip us up. So this is a big task. And as I say, I wouldn't cry at a draw. The fact that I would have a smile and have a little small gin and tonic if we got a draw. I'll have a large one if we get a win. But the way Newcastle are playing, they can beat anyone, and they have done. I mean, Liverpool's top of the league. They're going to be champions. We beat them at Wembley and wiped the floor with them. Arsenal are second. We've beaten them 3 times. Nottingham Forest have been third for the vast majority of the season. We've beaten them 3 times. We can play and beat anybody. We've beaten Aston Villa already this season. No question about that. The only question is, can the same 11 start every game and rack up such a good margin that we can go into the later stages and make substitutions and not worry about looking at the bench for a game changer. At some stage, we are going to have to look at the bench for a game changer. At some stage between now and the end of the season. And you could put Gordon down as that, but who else?
That is the key question. Obviously, provokes a bigger question for the summer as well. But it is all about Aston Villa on Saturday. I'm going to back them, at least through my heart, to win that game. And fingers crossed they do. So thanks to John for popping onto the show. It's been a pleasure, as always, to bring the show to you guys. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. And for myself and John, we'll see you guys next week.